The phone screen shook, not from bad signal, not from wind, from a hand holding it. Trembling with excitement, pointing straight at a man standing alone in the middle of a crowded street in Phoenix, Arizona. 3 large men formed a half-circle around him. Sunlight hit the concrete hard. Somewhere behind them, a car alarm wailed and went quiet. The biggest brother, a man built like a vending machine, screamed directly into the camera. Watch how we deal with weak men in this family. Live, right now. The live stream comments exploded like fireworks. End this man's career. He should have just stayed at home. 6,000 viewers and climbing. The husband stood there, calm, still, like the eye of a storm that hadn't started yet. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached down and unclipped his wristwatch, folded it into his palm, and set it gently on top of a nearby concrete wall, like he was placing a baby to sleep. Nobody in that crowd understood what that meant. Not yet. Cut to 12 hours earlier. Let me ask you something before we go back in time. Have you ever watched someone get disrespected in public and thought, why don't they just say something? Why don't they fight back? Why do they just stand there? What if the real reason they're quiet is the most dangerous reason of all? Declan Merritt woke up at 4:45 every morning. Not because an alarm told him to. Not because he had somewhere important to be. He woke up because his body had been trained years ago to rise before the sun. And some habits don't die just because your life changes shape. He lived in a modest house on the south side of Phoenix. Tan walls, flat roof, a small front yard with a single desert willow his daughter, Brianna, had planted when she was 6. She was 9 now. The tree had outlasted the idea of what this house was supposed to become. Declan ran a small electronics repair shop 3 blocks from home. 12 feet wide, 15 feet long, a cluttered shelf of salvaged circuit boards, and a handwritten sign above the door that read, Merritt Repairs. We fix what others quit on. The neighbors thought that was funny. They didn't know how much truth was hiding in those words. Every day, people brought in broken things. Cracked phone screens, dead laptops, busted car stereo systems. And every day, Declan sat down with a magnifying glass and a set of precision tools and gave those things back their purpose. He charged less than anyone else in the city. He stayed open late. He never turned a customer away. His wife, Lena, called this being soft. Lena Merritt was not a cruel woman in the way that monsters are cruel. She was cruel in a way that disappointment becomes a habit. Slow, creeping, and loud only when she needed an audience. She had married Declan 7 years ago when he was still competing. Back then, he had a reputation in certain circles, not the kind you broadcast, the kind whisper between coaches and trainers and old men who'd seen real fighters in their lives. But Lena hadn't married him for that. She'd married the version of him she thought she could upgrade. And when he retired from competing, when he put away the bag and picked up a soldering iron instead, she felt cheated. By what? She couldn't quite say. But it showed up every day in small, sharp ways. Declan, Weston Bradley just bought his wife a Cadillac. You know Weston? He sells car parts. Car parts. And he can afford a Cadillac. Declan would look up from whatever he was fixing and say, That's nice for Weston. It's not nice, Declan. It's a point. He never argued. He never shouted back. He just nodded slowly and returned to his work. Lena mistook his silence for weakness. She wasn't the first person to make that mistake. Now, and this is important, can anybody here relate to that feeling? You're trying to build something quiet and real, and someone who's supposed to be in your corner keeps measuring you against people on Instagram? Comment below. Have you ever been compared to someone you knew wasn't even half of what you are? The brothers were named Ryland, Booker, and Cassidy. If you've ever met men who believe their loudness is their power, you already know these 3. Ryland was the oldest and the biggest, with a shaved head and a YouTube channel called Ryland Raw where he filmed himself confronting strangers, getting into verbal altercations, and filming his own muscle flexing to motivational music that never quite fit the moment. He had 42,000 subscribers. He treated this number like a military rank. Booker was the middle brother. Lean, nervous energy, always filming with his phone, even when nothing was happening. He laughed too loud and too fast, and had a habit of putting on other people's things without asking. Cassidy was the youngest, quieter than the other two, which in this family just meant he talked slightly less. He still talked enough. They arrived at Declan and Lena's house on a Thursday afternoon in 2 cars, one of which had a cracked bumper that Declan had offered to fix 3 times and been refused 3 times. Ryland walked in, dropped onto the couch, and immediately reached for the plate of food Declan had just finished cooking. "Bro, what is this?" Ryland held up a fork of rice and stewed chicken and turned to Booker. He cooked again. He cooked again. Booker was already filming. "Pastor husband strikes again," he said, in the voice of a sports commentator. Cassidy found the refrigerator. Lena came out of the bedroom laughing. Declan stood in the kitchen doorway and watched his food disappear into 3 laughing mouths on camera, while his wife covered her smile with her hand, like she was trying to hide it and failing on purpose. "Lena," he said quietly. "Oh, relax," she said. "They're just playing." Ryland stood up, squared his shoulders, and fake boxed around Declan, throwing slow, theatrical punches that stopped inches from his face. The phone caught everything. Booker was already adding audio. Crowd noise, boxing bells, a slow-motion replay effect. Look at him. Look at this man. Does he even blink? Pastor husband. The man so holy he won't raise his hands in his own house. The comments rolled in live. LMAO, he's just standing there. Bro, defend yourself. This is painfully funny. Declan did not blink. He looked at Ryland with stillness that, had any of those commenters been standing 2 feet away, might have made them step back without knowing why. But Ryland was not paying attention to Declan's eyes. He was watching the phone screen. Later that night, while Lena was on a video call with her friend Portia from Scottsdale, Declan went to the back room of the house where they kept storage boxes and an old treadmill that nobody used. He pulled out a worn duffel bag from under the bed frame. He didn't open it. He just sat with it across his knees for a long moment, his thumb running slowly over a faded logo on the side of the bag, a coiled snake, printed in black, barely visible anymore. He pushed it back under. Then he went to check that Brianna's school clothes were ready for Friday. Quick question, did you catch that bag? The snake logo? Just hold on to that. We're not done. Declan's knuckles were strange. Not ugly strange. But if you looked closely, really looked, there were ridges of old scar tissue across the first 2 knuckles of each hand, the kind that only forms from years of impact against hard surfaces, the kind that fighters get and never lose. His neighbor, an elderly man named Elwood Pruitt, who sat on his porch every morning with black coffee and a distrust of anything that moved too fast, had noticed those knuckles months ago. Elwood was 73. He had watched boxing on television since before color TV existed. He had a framed photograph of a fighter on his living room wall that his daughter kept trying to donate to Goodwill. He kept moving it back. He watched Declan jog past his house every morning at 5 a.m. Same pace, same route, never headphones, never distracted. One morning, Elwood called out, "You run like a man who's running towards something, not away from it." Declan stopped, looked at him, smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Pruitt. You ever fight?" Elwood asked. "Not lately," Declan said. Elwood studied him for a long second. Something moved across the old man's face. Recognition, maybe, or the edge of a memory. But Declan had already resumed his run, smooth and quiet, and Elwood let it go. For now, inside the repair shop one afternoon, a customer, a college student named Thaddeus, who came in every few weeks with something new that needed fixing, noticed a framed newspaper clipping on the back wall behind Declan's workbench, yellowed, partially covered by a shelf of capacitors and spare screens. "What's that?" Thaddeus asked, craning his neck. Declan didn't look up from the motherboard he was tracing. Old paper. Thaddeus squinted. He could make out the headline, most of it. The visible part read, "Silent Cobra wins." The rest was hidden behind a row of soldering wire. "Silent Cobra?" Thaddeus laughed. "That a comic book?" "Something like that." Declan said, "You ever live in a place where people only know one version of you? Where the real story is right there on the wall, and nobody's curious enough to read the whole headline? Stay with us, because that headline is about to matter more than anyone in Phoenix could have imagined. It was a Friday night when Lena said the thing she could never take back. The brothers were over again. Booker was wearing Declan's gray hoodie, the one Declan wore for morning training, without having asked. It was a small thing, but it was the fourth small thing that week, stacked on top 100 small things from a month before, and something in the room felt like a wire pulled too tight. Rylan had a new idea for content. "We need something big," he said, pacing the living room. "Something that goes past 42K. Bro, we need something people share." "What about that thing we talked about?" Booker said, gesturing vaguely toward Declan, who was sitting at the kitchen table going through a stack of receipts. Rylan grinned. The humble husband challenge. Lena looked up from her phone. Declan didn't. "We set it up on the corner of Garfield and McDowell." Rylan said, "We announce it online. Big turnout. We come at him in public. Nothing crazy, just theatrical. And he just stands there like he always does. That's the content. That's the punchline. That's the whole thing," Booker confirmed. "The man who won't fight. We make him trend." Cassidy looked at his shoes. Declan placed a receipt down on the table slowly. He looked at his wife. "Lena." She met his eyes for a moment, just a moment. And in that moment, something complicated happened. She knew, somewhere underneath all the frustration and comparison and years of feeling like she'd settled, she knew this wasn't right. But then she looked at Ryland, at the excitement in his face, at the 42,000 subscribers he talked about like they validated every decision he'd ever made. And she made her choice. "Call my brothers," she said. "Let the whole internet see who you really are." The room went still. Declan stood up. He walked to the kitchen sink and washed his hands. Slow, deliberate, the way a surgeon prepares or a craftsman cleans up before putting his tools away for the last time. He dried his hands on the towel hanging from the oven handle. Then he walked down the hall to Brianna's room and knocked softly. "Daddy, hey, baby." He opened the door. Brianna was on her bed, a book balanced on her knees. She was 9 and already reading above her grade level, a fact that made Declan quietly proud every single day. "Tomorrow," he said gently, crouching beside her bed. "Stay inside." Brianna looked at him with the kind of serious attention that only children and very wise adults are capable of. "Why?" He smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Because your dad has to go outside and remind some people of something." He kissed her on the forehead and went back down the hall. He did not raise his voice for the rest of the night. "Now I need you to pause for a second and really think about what just happened." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He told his daughter to stay inside, not because he was scared, but because he already knew exactly how this was going to end, and he was making sure she didn't have to watch it. That's not weakness. That a man who has been in serious situations before and knows how to prepare. The question is, what kind of situations? Ryland's post went up at 11 that night. "Tomorrow, Garfield and McDowell. 2 p.m. We humble fake men live. Bring your phones." By morning, it had 7,000 shares. Ryland filmed a training montage in his bedroom, shadowboxing shirtless in front of a mirror, flexing, playing dramatic music from a Bluetooth speaker. He posted 3 hype videos. Booker posted a countdown. Cassidy posted nothing, which nobody noticed. At the corner of Garfield and McDowell, a small crowd began gathering by noon. People who knew Ryland's channel. People who'd seen the post shared through neighborhood groups. People who just happened to pass by and saw phones being pointed at a gathering and stopped, because that's what humans do. Plastic chairs from a nearby shop got dragged out. Someone brought a cooler. A woman named Deirdre from Block, who had lived on Garfield for 20 years and had a strong opinion about everything, sat up near the front with her phone on a selfie stick. She liked Declan. She brought her car to his shop twice. But she also had 600 followers and wasn't going to miss this. A young man named Fitzgerald, who trained at a gym 3 blocks over, showed up with 2 friends. He didn't know Declan. He'd just seen the post. An old man on a bicycle arrived last. Slow, deliberate, wearing a faded button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows. He parked his bicycle against a light post, folded his arms, and waited. That was Elwood Pruitt. He had a look on his face that nobody else in the crowd had. Not excitement, not amusement, concern. Declan arrived at 1:57. He walked from his shop. No car, no entourage. He wore the same gray work pants and dark shirt he wore every day. His repair bag was slung over one shoulder. He had been working until 15 minutes ago. A woman had come in with a broken tablet, and he'd fixed it while the live stream announcement climbed past 12,000 views. He set his bag down against the wall of the corner bodega. The crowd saw him, and the murmur went up like a wave. Ryland spotted him and raised both fists in the air. He showed up. He actually showed up. The live stream spiked. Booker zoomed in immediately. Comments flooded. Somebody call his mother. Bro came alone. He's cooked. Lena stood at the edge of the crowd. Phone recording, sunglasses on. She wasn't smiling yet. She was watching Declan's face with an expression she couldn't fully explain. Not quite pride in her brothers, not quite guilt. Somewhere in between, pressing against her chest. Ryland stepped forward. "Phoenix," he yelled to the crowd. "Today we show you what happens to men who think being quiet is the same as being strong." Cheers. Laughter. Phones everywhere. Declan looked at Ryland, then looked at Booker, then at Cassidy, who was standing slightly behind the others and looking at the ground. "I'm asking you," Declan said, not loudly, not angrily, just clearly, "to stop this now. Go home." The crowd laughed. "Pastor husband speaks." Ryland announced. More laughter. More shares. Declan said nothing else. Ryland moved first. Not a real punch. A shove. Theatrical. Meant for the camera. Declan absorbed it without moving his feet. Booker pulled Declan's work cap off and threw it into the dirt. That earned a big reaction. The comments loved it. Take his shoes next. Then Ryland reached into the crowd. He grabbed something. Brianna's school bag. She had followed her father. 9 years old, stubborn as morning, unable to stay inside, and had been standing quietly at the back of the crowd. Nobody had noticed her. Until now. Ryland held the bag up in the air. "This is daughter's bag?" he said to the camera, grinning. "This the legacy he's building? Let me help." He threw it. It hit the wet gutter at the side of the road with a slap. Books and pencils scattering across dirty water. The crowd went quieter. Declan did not look at the bag. He looked at Brianna first. She was standing very still. Her lower lip was pressed tight. She was not crying. She was refusing to cry. And that, more than anything, was what moved through Declan like a current. He walked to the gutter, crouched down, picked up each item, the pencil case, the workbook, the library book with the corner now soaked, and placed them carefully back inside the bag. He zipped it closed, stood up, turned to Deirdre, who was closest to him. "Hold this for her," he said quietly. Deirdre took the bag without a word. Then Declan reached down and removed his slippers, set them side by side on the concrete, and the air changed. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a movement. It was something atmospheric. The way a room gets quieter right before a thunderstorm hits, when the pressure shifts and every instinct in your body says something is different now, even before you can name it. Elwood Pruitt unfolded his arms. He took one step forward, his eyes locked on Declan's posture. The way the man's weight had shifted slightly to the balls of his feet, the way his hands had dropped to his sides with particular stillness, the way his chin had come down just a fraction of an inch. Elwood's mouth opened. "Lord have mercy," he whispered. Fitzgerald, the young man from the gym 3 blocks over, had trained for 4 years. He knew enough to recognize a stance. He turned his friend beside him and said very quietly, "We should move back." His friend said, "What? Why?" Fitzgerald was already moving. Ryland raised his fists and charged. And that is where we stop. There's a thing that happens in the body of a trained fighter when danger approaches. It is not a decision. It is not a thought. It is older than thought. It lives in the tendons, in the breath pattern, in the way the spine aligns without asking permission. Years of discipline carve grooves into the nervous system. And when the moment arrives, the body simply falls into those grooves the way water finds a riverbed. Declan Merritt had not competed in 7 years. But the body does not care about years. Ryland charged with both arms wide. The instinct of man who has won street confrontations by size alone, who has never met resistance he couldn't bulldoze through. He covered the distance in 2 seconds. He needed 1.5. What the live stream captured in the next 4 minutes became the most shared video in Phoenix local history for the next 3 months. But the camera, Booker's phone, shaking, pointed forward, could not capture what the people standing closest felt. The shift in air pressure as Declan moved. The sound not of impact, but of precision. The way 3 large men who had walked into that intersection with absolute confidence in their bodies suddenly discovered that confidence had an address and that address was wrong. Ryland's charge meant nothing. Declan was no longer where he had been. He had moved, not backward, sideways. A single step with his lead foot that took him off the line of attack as cleanly as turning a page, and Ryland's momentum carried him forward into the space where Declan used to be. The crowd inhaled. Ryland stumbled, caught himself, spun around. His face had changed. Not angry anymore. Something else. Something that lives one floor below anger. BRO. Booker said from behind the camera. Declan stood with his hands at his sides. Still, waiting. Look at the comments right now. Look at the live chat during this moment in the original video. Someone wrote, "Why does it feel like the temperature dropped?" That's not an exaggeration. That's a person describing something real that has no clean English word for it. Some languages call it presence. Some call it killing intent. Whatever you call it, the crowd felt it, and so did the brothers. Ryland came again, this time lower, trying to grab, to wrestle, to use weight. Declan caught his wrist. One hand, one grip, and applied something, a pressure point lock, precise, surgical. That dropped Ryland to one knee, and under a second with sound that came out of his mouth, like a question he hadn't meant to ask out loud. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, in something closer to shock. Booker lunged from the left. He got one hand on Declan's shoulder before Declan turned into the grab instead of away from it, a rotation so tight and controlled it looked like choreography, and redirected Booker's own forward energy into the row of plastic chairs set up at the edge of the crowd. Booker hit 3 of them. One bounced off his shin and slid into the street. One chair, and this is a part the internet could not stop replaying, flew up and hit Booker in the back of the head on his way down, as if the chair had opinions about the situation and wanted to be heard. The crowd lost its mind. I need to be honest with you. There are moments in this story where it gets genuinely hard not to laugh, because Booker, on the way down, was still holding his phone, still recording. The last frame before the phone hit the ground was a perfect vertical shot of the Phoenix sky. And somewhere in the comments someone wrote, "He gave us drone footage on the way out." I cannot. Cassidy, to his credit, hesitated. He stood at the edge of the action, watched his 2 older brothers, one on one knee making sound of protest, one tangled in plastic furniture, and something in his face shifted. He looked at Declan. Declan looked back at him. A long second. Cassidy put his hands up, not to fight, palms out, backward step. The only smart decision any of those 3 men made that afternoon. Ryland tried once more. Pride is a powerful and stupid thing, and this time Declan caught on a hold that the young man named Fitzgerald, watching from 20 feet back with actual training in his body, later described in an interview as textbook Brazilian jiu-jitsu control, except smoother than anything I've seen outside of a competition floor. Ryland was face down on the concrete. Not hurt, not seriously, but completely, humiliatingly, thoroughly done. Declan held the position for 3 seconds, enough to be certain, and then released. He stood up. He straightened his shirt. He looked at the live stream phone, Booker's, now recovered, and pointed at him from a safe distance by a stranger who had picked it up, and said calmly to the 6,000 people watching, "Strength is control, not noise." The comment section stopped moving for 4 full seconds. Then it detonated. Elwood Pruitt had pushed through to the front of the crowd during the final exchange. He was 73 years old and had no business being that close to anything physical, but nobody stopped him because he moved like a man who had earned the right to go anywhere he pleased. He stood 5 feet from Declan and stared at him with an expression that was equal parts recognition and something that looked, if you watched carefully, like grief. "I knew it," Elwood said. Not loudly, just to himself. Then louder, "I knew it." He turned to the crowd, to Deirdre, to Fitzgerald, to the 30 people standing close enough to hear him. and his voice came out like a man reading something from a page he'd memorized 40 years ago. "That is Silent Cobra." Silence. Then Deirdre said, "Who?" And Elwood said, "Son, go to YouTube right now and type in Silent Cobra Regional Championship 2014. Type it in. I'll wait." Fitzgerald pulled out his phone. He typed. The results came back. His face changed. The video had 240,000 views. Old footage, grainy, from a regional martial arts championship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The title card at the start read, Southwest Regional Open, Black Belt Division, Finals. A commentator's voice crackled over the footage. And in the blue corner, undefeated in 12 consecutive bouts, competing out of Phoenix, Arizona, Declan Silent Cobra Merritt. Fitzgerald turned his phone around to the nearest person. That person turned to the next. Within 90 seconds, 12 phones in the crowd were playing the same video. The thumbnail showed a younger Declan, leaner, sharper, a focused intensity in his eyes that matched the man standing in front of them now, dropping to his fighting stance while the crowd in the old arena cheered. In the video, the fight lasted 47 seconds. 47 seconds for a championship final. Nobody could believe that either. The comments on Ryland's live stream, which was still somehow running, held by a stranger from the crowd who had silently taken over camera duties, shifted direction like a river hitting a cliff. Wait. He was a national champion? They attacked Silent Cobra? Somebody call these brothers' families and tell them to bring apology gifts. The man fixed phones for a living and could have ended all three of them at any point and chose not to. I am deceased. I am fully deceased. Ryland out here, trying to humble a decorated black belt. I can't stop crying laughing. The way he just stood there while they ate his food, he was choosing peace every single day. The live stream that had been announced as Humble Fake Men Live now had 31,000 concurrent viewers and was trending locally under the tag, #Silent Cobra Phoenix. And here's the thing nobody in that crowd knew yet. The thing that made this story bigger than a fight. There was a reason Declan had retired. There was a reason he put away the bag, hung up the gloves, and spent 7 years fixing broken screens in a 12x15 shop instead of collecting trophies. That reason is the part of this story that doesn't get shared as a meme. That's the part that matters most. 3 months after the incident on Garfield and McDowell, a journalist from an Arizona sports blog named Waverly Osei tracked Declan down at the shop. She had done her research. She had found the old tournament records. She had spoken to coaches and former competitors, and one referee who said when she mentioned the name Silent Cobra, "Oh, that Declan Merritt." She sat across from him at his workbench while he replaced a cracked screen on someone's tablet and asked him why he left. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Albuquerque, 2017 championship, semifinals. She looked it up on her phone. The record showed a withdrawal. No explanation filed. "I hurt someone," Declan said, not on purpose. But intent doesn't set bones. He kept his eyes on the tablet. The other fighter was in the hospital for 11 days. His name was Perry Coates. He was 22. He's fine now, has a family. But those 11 days, he paused. Those 11 days changed something in how I thought about what I was doing with my hands. Waverly asked if he regretted leaving competition. He thought about it with the same deliberateness he applied to everything. I regret that Perry got hurt. I don't regret choosing peace. I chose it for Brianna. I chose it for what I wanted to be inside my own house. He set the tablet down. I just didn't expect my own house to bring the fight to me. Waverly's article ran, the following Tuesday. By Friday, it had been picked up by 4 national sports platforms. By the following Monday, Declan's story had reached people who had no idea Phoenix existed. The night after the intersection, Lena sat in her living room alone. The house was quiet in a way that had a texture to it. Not peaceful quiet, not comfortable quiet. The kind of quiet that fills a space after something is broken and the breaking can't be undone. She had watched the whole thing from 20 feet away. She had watched her husband, the man she had compared to Weston Bradley in his Cadillac, the man she had allowed her brothers to humiliate on camera for weeks, the man she had called soft and small and going nowhere. She had watched that man dismantle her 3 brothers in under 4 minutes with the kind of controlled, deliberate precision that made the entire crowd step back. And then she had watched him pick up her daughter's wet school books from a dirty gutter. That image would not leave her. She went to the back room. She pulled out the duffel bag from under the bed. She opened it this time. Inside, old competition certificates, rolled and banded. A photograph of Declan at 26, holding a trophy, smiling the way he almost never smiled anymore. A small notebook filled with training notes in his handwriting, dates going back 15 years. And at the very bottom, a folded envelope with her name on it. Her name, written years ago, in his handwriting, never given to her. She opened it with hands that were not steady. Inside was a single page, a printout of a business registration document. The business name, Lena's Custom Apparel and Design. She had mentioned wanting to open a clothing boutique exactly once. 2 years ago, in passing, half joking, while watching a home shopping channel at midnight. She had never mentioned it again. He had registered the business name. He had opened a savings account. The balance was on a sticky note attached to the printout. For years of quiet, steady deposits, enough to sign a lease and stock a first inventory. He had been building her dream in silence while she told anyone who would listen that he wasn't building anything. Lena sat on the floor of that back room with the envelope in her lap and the photograph in her hand and made sounds that had no name. There it is. That's the moment. Not the fight. Not the viral video. Not the 31,000 viewers. This, a woman on the floor of a storage room holding a dream her husband built for her without ever asking for credit. This is the real story. Now I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with yourself when you answer it. Have you ever misjudged someone who was quietly doing everything right? Have you ever let the noise of what other people had make you blind to what was right in front of you? Comment below. I read everyone. Declan came home at 9 that evening. Lena was standing in the hallway when he opened the door. The envelope was in her hand. Her eyes were the kind of red that comes from hours, not minutes. He looked at the envelope, looked at her face. He did not say, "I told you so." He did not say anything that lived in the territory of victory or punishment. He walked past her gently, like someone walking around a fallen thing, and went to check on Brianna. When he came back, Lena said, "Declan, please." He stood in the kitchen doorway. "I found the account," she said. "I found the registration. I found the letter. I read everything." He looked at her with an expression that held nothing punishing in it, only something tired and certain. "Declan, I'm sorry. She stopped, started again. "I didn't." "You didn't see me," he said quietly. "I know. Please don't go." He walked to the bedroom. He packed one bag. Careful, deliberate, the way he did everything. He took his competition certificates from the duffel. He took the photograph. He left the savings account documents on the kitchen counter. He came back down the hall, bag over one shoulder, and Lena was in the doorway again. She reached out and put her hand on his arm. He stopped. He looked at her hand, then at her face. "You have the account," he said. "Open the boutique. Do it right." He paused. Brianna needs her mother to be someone she's proud of. He moved her hand gently and walked out the front door. No shouting. No slamming. No final speech designed to wound. Just the sound of the door closing. And in the desert night outside, wide and indifferent and full of stars, Lena stood in the open doorway for a long time after the taillights of his truck disappeared around the corner. Across the street, she could see the desert willow in the front yard, the one Brianna had planted 3 years ago, because her father had told her that things you grow from the ground up are the ones that outlast everything. She had not watered that tree once. Declan had watered it every morning. What happened to Ryland, Booker, and Cassidy in the weeks that followed was the internet doing what the internet does when it decides it's found something worth taking apart. The original live stream, with Ryland's dramatic announcement, the fake boxing around Declan, Booker eating his food, the school bag thrown into the gutter, and then 4 minutes of the most efficient martial arts the comment section had ever witnessed outside a professional broadcast was remixed, reposted, and reacted by channels across the country. Ryland's Ryland Raw channel lost 11,000 subscribers in 4 days. A remix video titled pastor husband was built different got 2 million views on a platform he had nothing to do with. Booker's accidental sky footage on the way down became a meme template that people used for the next 6 weeks to describe any situation where someone had confidently walked into something they were completely unprepared for. Cassidy quietly deleted all his social media and, according to a neighbor, got a job in landscaping and told people his name was CJ. Ryland tried twice to post response videos explaining himself. The comment sections on both videos were so thoroughly hostile that he disabled comments and then deleted the videos and then, eventually, disabled new uploads entirely and went quiet. The Ryland Raw channel, which had been his identity, his validation, his rank, 42,000 subscribers and a reason to walk into rooms with his chest out, sat idle on the internet like a monument to a version of himself he could no longer afford to be. An entertainment blog wrote a short piece with the headline, "3 brothers tried to go viral. The internet had other plans." Ryland read it at 2 a.m. on a Thursday and didn't tell anyone he had read it 3 times. Here's something worth sitting with. Ryland spent years building an audience off the idea that loud men are strong men. And in 4 minutes, on his own live stream, his own camera, his own crowd, the universe demonstrated the opposite. Some lessons are gentle. Some arrive with cameras rolling. 6 months later, a building on the corner of Van Buren and 16th Street in Phoenix, a former tile warehouse that had been empty for 2 years, got new windows. A new sign went above the door. Black background, gold letters, a small coiled snake logo in the corner. Silent Cobra Martial Arts Academy. Discipline, precision, peace. The opening day drew 43 people, mostly children and teenagers in the surrounding neighborhoods, a few adults, Elwood Prue in the front row with his arms folded and a look of complete satisfaction, and a young man named Fitzgerald, who showed up with his gym bag and asked if there was space for someone who already had 4 years of training but wanted to learn how to be still. Declan said there was always space for that. A reporter from the Arizona sports blog, Waverly Osei, who had written the original profile piece, was there with a camera. She asked Declan before the session began if he had anything to say to the people who had watched the viral video. He thought about it. "Tell them this isn't a revenge story," he said. "Revenge would have been hurting those 3 men. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted them to stop." He looked at the children warming up on the mat. "This is just what comes after the test. You pass the test, you get to build something." Waverly wrote that down. It became the closing line of her follow-up article. It became the most shared sentence in the comments section. And in a boutique 3 miles away, new lease, new signage, handmade clothing racks, and 2 hired seamstresses, and a name painted carefully above the door. Lena stood at the window watching her first real customer walk through the door. The boutique was called Brianna's. She had renamed it, not for herself, for the 9-year-old who had followed her father to an intersection and watched the world finally learn what she had always known about him. One more scene. Stay with me. 3 months after the academy opened, a boy named Deshaun, 12 years old, quick hands, serious eyes, had become one of Declan's most attentive students. He stayed late after every session, swept the mats without being asked, and watched everything Declan did with the focused attention of someone who was not just learning technique, but trying to understand something deeper. One evening, after the other students had gone and the gym was quiet, Deshaun was lacing his shoes near the door. He said, without looking up, "Master Merritt?" Declan was rolling the practice mats to the wall. "Yeah. Were you really Silent Cobra?" The gym was quiet. Dust moved in the last light coming through the high windows. Outside, someone's car radio passed slow and faded. Declan set the mat against the wall. He turned around, looked at the boy with that calm, full attention he gave everything. Broken tablets, leaking sinks, and 12-year-olds asking the right questions. A small smile crossed his face. That man no longer fights for anger. Deshaun looked up. "Then what does he fight for?" he asked. Declan picked up his bag. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "We'll work on that." He walked to the door, turned off the gym light, and the room went dark. Not empty dark, not sad dark, but the kind of dark a room holds after something real has happened inside it. The kind that means the space has been used for something that mattered. If this story moved you in any way, If you've ever been a person in a room that everyone underestimated, if you've ever chosen peace when everything in you wanted to respond, if you've ever silently built something for someone who couldn't see what you were building, this one was for you, like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because we tell these kinds of stories every week. The ones where the quiet person turns out to be carrying everything. The ones where patience isn't weakness. The ones where the ending hits harder than the beginning promised. You've been watching. Thank you for staying until the end. That's where all the real things live. At the end, after most people have already left.